This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. So that's a pleasure for me to start this webinar. I'm Nicolas Fejean, and I will be the moderator for today. This webinar, it's led by the PIC, the Plant Intercluster Alliance or Network, and it will last 1 hour. And today the session will be following this agenda, the introduction by me, and then we will go as we would like to have different vision from Europe about one specific topic that it's very important and which live and lead new challenges and new goals for the next programmation for the European Union. So we will have 3 speakers, and I want to thank them all to be here with us today. Jacopo Orlando from Aboca. From Spain, we have Jan van der Blom from the COEXPAL organization, and from the Netherlands, Peter Jens from Coopert, and Biopharma company. So the speech will go like this, to talk about organic production, the challenges, the vision from each of them, what is going on, what is the main trend work that they do, from the very technical even to more what we expect from the regulation, for example. So that would be the point. It's not about a webinar about lobbying. It's more what we do, what we consider to be the most important work to do concerning this this topic. And we will have some question and answer. So again, the chat is here to interact with us, and we will have a short moment for that at the end of the presentation. But you can always write a question all along the presentation and the session. So I just want, before let the floor to Jacopo, introduce again the PIC network, who we are and what we do. Most of you are related to one of the cluster here in the map, and it's our alliance between different clusters in Spain, Portugal, Italy, Romania, Netherlands, and I will also mention Poland and Denmark. That makes that we work together all year, all along the year, and now we want to make sure that our members, you, companies, research centers, training centers, are also connected and facilitate the linkages between you. So these webinars would be the first of a series of webinars that we want to implement. Today it's about organic, but we are imagining other topics very interesting about digitalization or about bioeconomy, just to mention some of them. And be sure that all clusters are here at your disposal to ensure linkages. If you are looking for partners, someone to talk about a specific challenge or a specific constraints that you have, it could be for partnership, it could be also for business. So be sure that we are here, and that's the role of PIC. So what we would like to start, and the starting point of today, it was the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork programmation to say that, okay, for 2030, the targets for sustainable food, it's those one with those figures that you see. And we consider that there is soon coming up some opportunities for new innovation projects with the Horizon Europe, the Green Deal, and so on. Organic and sustainable agriculture, there is 2 ways to think about it, and it's important to know that in the programmation, these keywords will come, and it's important to identify partners, identify people who are already working on it and open to collaboration. And the most important thing is to share vision and share what you are working in your own territory and how you consider these keywords about organic or sustainability in plant production. And that's the main point. It's to share ideas, vision, constraints, and how you get advanced or how you get stuck in some question. So here the 3 speakers of today will highlight their own vision in their own country and your own context. And I will start with Jacopo Orlando from Aboca company. but also linked with Federbio Servizi cooperative, let's say. And you will talk about more your country, Italy, your expertise as Aboca, and then how we can link with the Green Deal. So, Jacopo, the floor is yours. If you want to share the screen, normally you are able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nicolas. I'm very glad to be here. I'm going to present. Okay, now you should see my screen. Let me check. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm just trying to put outside the Go meeting up.
We don't see it, okay. Jacopo, don't worry.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to present the main data about organic farming in Italy, and then I will focus on the company where I work, Aboca, in order to stress some elements that are, I think, very linked to the new trends of the Green Deal that you presented before. So organic farming in Italy is characterized by a cultivated area of almost 2 million hectares and by a number of operators that exceeds 80,000. Organic farms in Italy represent around 6% of total farms, and the average size of an organic farm is about 28 hectares. That is quite higher than the average size of conventional farms. The region with the highest number of operators are Sicily, Calabria, and Puglia, so in the south of Italy. And about the consumption in Italy, organic food products grew by around 4% in the last year, exceeding the 3 billion euros. Consumption continues to grow during this year, even if, as you can see in the graph, the growth is increasing in the last period. The growth in the consumption of organic products continues to be higher than the conventional products, and also this aspect you can see in with the two different colors in the graph. So about Aboca. Aboca was founded 40 years ago with the aim of restoring the role played by natural substances in the human health and well-being in a research-oriented context using the criteria of evidence-based medicine. So Aboca covers all the main self-medication health needs. So our market is in the self-medication areas, but we are an agricultural company, as I'm going to present. This is our founder, Mr. Valentino Mercati, that started to produce medicinal plants in the central Italy 40 years ago without the use of any kind of chemical substances. So we started to produce inorganic before then a specific regulation was made at European level. Some data about the company. The group works, as I said before, in the production of food supplement and medical devices made of natural substances that are sold in 16 different countries. And the group employs over than 1,500 people and had a turnover of 229 million in 2019. Investment in different areas of research are very important, and they represent a key element of our success. And today there are more than 100 researchers involved. As we will see later, Aboca directly manages over than 1,700 hectares in Umbria and Tuscany, according to the organic method for producing over than 60 different medicinal plants. All final products are made at Aboca's production site that is in Umbria, so close to Tuscany. The groups control also Apoteca Natura, an international network of pharmacies in Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And the group also includes a museum of medical herbs and a publishing house. The main characteristic of the company is the overall control of a vertically integrated supply chain. So we directly manage our own production chain, from research to organic farming and production, distribution, and communication. And so I can say that while today many companies used to outsource services and function, every single function at Aboca is directly managed in-house. All start with the approach of research that is quite important in order to be able to have safe and safe products that are useful for healthcare. So everything starts with the farming cycle. The farming cycle starts with the production of the seed and ends with the plant drying, providing a high quality of raw materials. Each crop involves the use of specific techniques and machinery, most of which are developed by Aboca in order to be able to control, for example, weeds in organic production. Any crop is constantly improved in order to increase the quality of drugs and also improve the productivity or even enhance some agronomic characteristics. Some of these elements, farm organically, I said, respect of good agricultural collection practices is an aspect that is mandatory, I can say, for those companies which operate in our market. So the main characteristic of our production is the organic method, and as we will see later, also the protection of biodiversity. All the herbs are then processed in our pharmaceutical site, and our agricultural activities are spread over a total area of approximately 1,700 hectares. Which includes plains, hillside, and also woods located between Umbria and Tuscany. And beside medicinal species are the core business, also other crops are cultivated, like barley, wheat, field beans, and so on, in order to make balanced rotation and preserve the agroecosystem diversity. Why organic? We decided to produce organic in order to have in order to guarantee the absence of pesticides and pollutions, and because our approach is made on the complexity of nature, and so when we talk about complexity of nature, organic production is the way that it's most proper in order to be in line with this target, and also because there is a great attention to the impact of all our activities on the environment. And this aspect is significant since we decided to become a benefit corporation. I don't know if you already know these terms. A benefit corporation is a company which decides to introduce in its own statute some common benefit goals. So we became a benefit corporation in 2018, including some specific common benefit goals inside to our statute. In particular way, we focus on the promotion of health, research and development effort, the creation of new supply chain models based on the active involvement of all stakeholders, orientation to cultural, social, and economic development, and the creation of a positive work environment. But probably the most important for the webinar of today is our fourth goal, that is the promotion of environmentally friendly practices, and in particular organic farming as a system of cultivation that is founded on the respect for natural resources, biodiversity, and soil vitality. So the focus is on biodiversity, and our system, as I said before, is made of complexity. For this reason, agrobiodiversity and soil biodiversity are essential. So we have to maintain biodiversity, since ecosystem services that biodiversity create play a fundamental role in making the system resilient. Since 2016, we are part of the Biodiversity Alliance certification scheme, which proves the high level of biodiversity in our agroecosystem. And during this last year, in 2020, we obtained the maximum score of 100 on 100 points available as the first firm in Europe. The complexity of natural environment is so the starting point for the use of natural substances, and so we are very aligned with the content of the new biodiversity strategy made by the European Commission. Our activities in preservation and valorization of agrobiodiversity start from the biodiversity of varieties. So we cultivate, as I said before, around 67, 70 different species. That it's a quite high number of species, even especially if you compare this number of species to the one that is normally cultivated in conventional farming. Also sagittal biodiversity, so the diversity of those plants that are weeds is very important. So weeds have to be controlled in order to be able to have a high level of quality and quantity in organic farming without the use of herbicides, but they are also essential in the agroecosystem in order to have the possibility to host some useful species of insects. So we use buffer for wild species along our fields. And also we have a strong commitment in conservation of agrobiodiversity thanks to a medicinal garden. And so all these aspects with a specific attention to the techniques used in the topsoil activities made us able to gain the score of 100 on 100 score for Biodiversity Alliance certification. So the conclusion are that our approach, we think that our approach can be seen like a proof that the contents of the European Green Deal, and more in detail of farm to fork strategy and biodiversity strategy, may also represent a huge opportunity for companies, in particular way because sustainability has to be seen as an element of competitiveness. And this is the reason because we decided to become Benefit Corporation and then to have also specific certification, the B Corp certification. And also that focus on agronomical and organic techniques which makes a positive impact on the biodiversity is something that is required by the European Commission and also by consumers. But if we talk about organic production, biodiversity is essential. So we have to make an effort in order to maintain biodiversity if we want to be able to produce in organic way, in efficient and resilient way. And all these aspects are fundamental in our experience, since our production is made of 100% natural. So we use medicinal plants cultivated organically in order to obtain food supplement and medical devices in a way in our site that involves specific techniques that avoid the use of chemical substances. So, for example, for the extraction, we use only water and alcohol made from organic corn. And so all these aspects helps to have an environmental friendly approach, and in order to be able to guarantee the safe for human health. So we think that the contents of the new Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategy have to be seen as a great opportunity for companies. Thank you
Thanks.
very much. I'm available for your questions.
Thanks, Jacopo. You did just 15 minutes as we said and convinced together. So it's important to see that you have to get this vision. When we talk organic, on your side, you talk about the keywords as sustainability, biodiversity, and you have the point of view of this vertical integration, which is something more global. And now I will let the floor directly to Jan van der Blom from Coexpal, who will explain a bit more on techniques in Andalusia, in Almeria, how it works and what could be the challenges on the greenhouses there. So Jan, normally the floor is yours. You can share your screen.
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting us in this forum and for participating in this very interesting discussion on how to improve sustainability in our sector. Indeed, I'm going to share my my screen. Let's see if it all works. It seems to be working fairly well. Let's go to the first slide. Yeah, here we are. Organic greenhouse crops in Spain. I'm going to talk only on greenhouse vegetable crops. That's what we have in Almeria, and the organically certified crops are have become a very important part of our total production. To give a small overview here, you see a picture, a satellite picture, and all the white areas are covered with greenhouses. All together in Almeria we have 30,000 hectares of greenhouses, and by now about 12% are certified for organic production, and there's some more in transition, so it's still growing. So that obviously means that if that's all scattered around in the area, that if we talk about sustainable organic production, in fact, we have to follow the same discussion as when we're talking about sustainable horticulture production in general. How can we get this sustainable if you're so close to each other? If in fact you have a mono crop, if you have so little variety and so little vegetation, what can we do? First of all, there's a very important discussion on how can we improve sustainability. Until now, only crops can only be grown in soil. In Almeria, the usual way to go is in soil with a sandy layer on top of that, and with drip irrigation, of course. And this drip irrigation already means that with this sandy soil system, we have more harvest per cubic meter water than you have in other agricultural crops. We have a better output than in other crops, but that does not mean that it cannot be improved, of course. We know that the crops in substrate, if you can recycle the drainage water, can produce with less water and with less fertilizer. So that's a very interesting alternative. In fact, we have growers who have been working this way. And in some cases, I know growers who have had this kind of installations recirculating the drainage water. But in order to be able to produce an organic crop, they have gone back to growing in the soil. In conventional crops, less than 20% of the growers is using substrate. By far, most of them are growing in soil. So what can we do to optimize that? We know that if you improve the system, if you improve the kind of dripper you use, if you implement techniques, we estimate that in general we can save a lot of water, maybe 30–40%, and at least the same percentage of fertilizer. So that's very important to try to achieve, or not to try, simply to achieve it. And we have instruments for that. Formerly, we only had this kind of devices, the tension meter, which is something that gives an idea about the humidity, the tension in the root system. And if you read this a few times a day, you can correct, based on what you see, you can correct the irrigation to get the optimal value. But that requires discipline, and it requires that continuously you need to correct by hand. And of course now there are new possibilities where electrotension meters together with other sensors will give you immediately the development of the humidity of all kind of other variables in your mobile phone, and which can also be connected directly to the irrigation system. So that means that we now have the tools to get to an optimization of irrigation in general. And of course, it's a very important priority to get to an implementation of this kind of tools to improve sustainability, and in the first place also to improve sustainability in the ecological crops. Sensors and apps, there are still a lot of things which are now being tried out. Some have already demonstrated their value for a few years, but that I repeat, we need to spend a lot of energy on implementing these kind of tools. But it's a very interesting thing, and we think that we can get to an important reduction of water and fertilizer use. Still, most of the growers will disinfect their soil through solarization. You put some transparent plastic on the soil, and in the middle of the summer, when you don't have a crop, you close the greenhouse completely, and due to the heat that's produced under the plastic, together with water you irrigate, you get a kind of, well, it's almost boiling, and so you get a disinfection of the top layer of the soil, and many growers are using that. But we also see that there are very interesting developments in especially ecological crops, in organic crops, where people are deliberately working to get to microbiological balance in the soil. They bring in organic material. Many growers are bringing in the crop residues. In other cases, they take out the crop, they compost it somewhere else, and then they bring back compost. But this management of living soils has already been demonstrated by a limited amount of growers to be able to substitute completely the disinfections. So this is something we are definitely also giving a lot of attention, not only thinking of the organic growers, but also thinking of the conventional growers who are producing in soil. So that is a very important point of attention. Pest control, which is basically my expertise. I've been working in pest control since over 25 years in the south of Spain, and we have seen a very interesting development there. We had huge problems in sweet pepper due to resistance to insecticides, thrips most of all, and we have been able to make a big switch to biological control around 2007. But for 2007, there were 8,000 hectares with chemical control, and then very slowly, already starting with the first beautiful greenhouses in 1995, and slowly we got to understand better how to make the transition, how to make it work, and everybody badly wanted to change. So after 2007, biological control has been adopted by all sweet pepper growers in Almeria, and after that also by most of the producers of other crops. And in fact, we can say that the biological control has paved the way to organic crop management, because once pest control was more or less resolved with biological control, then it was not such a big step to also adapt the fertilization and the other things that are compulsory in organic crops. So what kind of challenges do we see in pest control? First of all, we see that biological control is increasingly important. There is due to the climate change, we have less cold in the winter, we have no heating in the greenhouses. So, but we see a prolonged pest activity. We see that sometimes people are obliged to stop a crop due to pest, or they have huge problems in the months of January and February, something that was 15 years ago was never the case. 15 years ago, you could stop thinking about pests at the end of November to start thinking of them again at the half of February, the end of February. So with a prolonged pest activity in winter, we need more months, more generations of pests to be controlled. And therefore, we need biological control. There are very few organic pesticides available with a limited efficiency, and we know that's going to be less and less. So biological control should be not only be maintained, but we have to look for new solutions against bottleneck pests, which may be invasive pests or traditional pests, and it may be by breeding and releasing other natural enemies, species which are now not used for commercial breeding and introduction, but it also means to adapt the greenhouse conditions, have better climate control to create better conditions for auxiliary fauna to do the job. And we need to focus on agroecology, and I'm going to show what I mean with that. An example of one of the most difficult pests in organic crops is aphids. We have several species in sweet pepper, Aphid gossipin, Mesopersicae, Macrocipha myphorbiae, especially the latter is difficult to control. Aphid control is of parasitoids, Aphidius, but we see that the results are not always predictable. We see that in some times of the year, in some conditions, Aphidius is not reaching the control as we would like to see it. So there are huge losses, especially in organic crops where they have no other tools. What we started already a long time ago was the use of banker plants, in this case cereals with their own aphid that serve as host for the same natural enemies of the aphids that affect the crop. These aphids from cereals will not jump to sweet pepper or to other greenhouse vegetables. They will stay on the cereals, and so you can have your breeding in the greenhouse. We now see that the use of banker plants is changing. We do not use simply potted plants. Here we see this woman is having a management of sowing cereals, and she introduces the aphids on that, and then she gets to breeding parasitoids and predators of aphids on a huge scale already before the crop is starting to become important. In this case, a watermelon crop, which has recently been transplanted. It is still under the blanket. We also look at other possible banker plants, and not always the traditional ones. We see that some weeds can play an important role. For example, this sonchus has a very interesting role on sonchus, which is one of the most common weeds in greenhouses, which was formerly always taken away. You can see these aphids, which are completely specific for sonchus, Uroleucon sonchi, and this is an excellent host for the parasitoids that may also play a role in controlling Macrocipha. It also is a good host for other natural enemies, the ladybirds, the lacewings. And what you finally want to see is that there is a diversification, that you see a role of different types of natural enemies in the greenhouses, as you see here, Laviv chrysopa, Aphidoletis, Aphidius, etc. You want to reach a balance. And we know that what you release is important, but it's also very, very important that you respect what's coming in spontaneously. And we know that last year, 30% of the growers, of the sweet pepper growers, have said to found in an inquiry natural enemies they have not released. So one there are two things which are interesting here. First, that we know that there's such an important role of the spontaneously entering species, and second, that so many growers recognize them. So that's very interesting to see. In order to promote that and to get to a situation where this beneficial fauna is doing well, we now need other resources. In this case, we see Lobularia maritima planted in the sweet pepper greenhouses, and that offers a complementary food supply through the nectar and pollen it produces in the flowering. And here we see, for example, this grower has it because he knows that in winter the flowering of the sweet pepper will almost disappear in winter, and in order to maintain the beneficial fauna, he has this Lobularia where aureus and also predatory mites may find a refuge in that time of the year. Another thing is that we start to see the use of sentinel plants. The first time I saw, and that's not so long ago, that a grower had some nettles, Urtica dioica, in his greenhouse. I didn't know what to think of it. And he said, well, this is an excellent sentinel plant for red spider mite, because I have a big greenhouse of sweet pepper, but if I only check the few places where I have some of the nettles, I will always find the first attacks of red spider mite in those nettles. So I can act there, I can release some beneficial mites, some Vitacelas there, and that makes it very comfortable for me, because I know for sure that this is the plant where the pest will first appear. Okay, the sentinel plant. Another thing as well. So altogether, if we look at the greenhouse, we see sometimes it's almost difficult to see the crop, but also in this case, where I think if you start to count, the grower may have sacrificed 1% of the crop space and light for this complementary plants. We see three different kinds of plants. We have the banker plants as the cereals and the sonchus. We have the alternative food supply as Lobularia, and we have the sentinel plants as the nettles we've seen. And this same philosophy is also brought outside. If you know that there are so many beneficial fauna coming from outside, you can improve the situation around the greenhouses. Not only to get those natural enemies inside the greenhouse, but also to limit the movements of pests between greenhouses. And if you think of the first pictures with this huge sea of plastic, you can imagine that there was hardly any obstacle for pest insects or mites to move between crops. Well, if they sit down in a flowering plant or in a shrub or wherever, they can find a spider, or the spider can find them. They can find all kinds of beneficial insects, and so we can limit very much the movement between pests between greenhouses. We see that especially around organic crops, people are taking that very seriously. And there are more and more examples. We estimate now that there's in the last 3 years there has been planted over 150 hectares of hedgerows already around the greenhouse. We recommend for that to use a selection of autochthonous plant species, rosemary and well, we've seen the Nerium oleander, and people can select the species based on information they can find in an application, or which is transferred in other ways. And more people are taking that seriously, not only the organic growers, but also the others. And that will change the landscape. Still, 100 kilometers is not much in this very dense area, but we see an enormous interest, and the growers, thanks to what they now know of biological control, are becoming very interested. So biodiversity is totally functional in a modern horticulture. That is a complete new concept if we compare that with what was taught growers 15, 20 years ago, where they were taught that everything should be clean, there should be no weeds, there should be no possible plants where pests could develop hotspots, not inside nor outside the greenhouse. Keep it all free from weeds. Now we know that doesn't work. Now we know that biodiversity is very positive in getting a balance in the fauna and getting the contribution of the beneficial fauna we need. It's the key to sustainability. And the organic growers have an important role in improving the sustainability in general. This philosophy, which is very easily understood by the growers for the pests in the leaf mass, now is also applied not on a big scale yet to the soil management, because also in soil management we have to convince growers that if you find this microbiological balance in the soil, then you may have less problems with pests. And we have more and more examples of growers who have carefully managed the organic material content of the soil. They are balancing their fertilization, and who have seen that in past years things like nematodes or fungal diseases, soil problems have slowly disappeared. So an important role, and with that I finish my contribution. It's only very short. I have not been able to enter into a lot of detail, but I'll be very happy to answer questions or to get into discussion with people even after this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jan, for your presentation. It was quite interesting to start from Italy when we talk about open field and medicinal plants. Here we go to Andalusia and we see more fruit and vegetables in an intensive way of looking and how you integrate organic production, how we see how it becomes complex to use nature to be our main support, and how also new technologies for water management, for all these digitalization sensors and so on, will help you to increase and be more efficient in organic production. And the last point that you mentioned, it's the soil. Now that's sure that in Europe, soil it's the main point to be organic. And that's the good transition with our colleagues from the Netherlands. So I let the floor to Peter Jens from the CEO of And As Nature Does Biopharma Companies, Director of Strategic Alliance for that. So here's 15 minutes.
Thank you all for being here. I have another 15 or 14 minutes, so I have to speed up. I was asked to think about or present about the possibility of a new perspective on organic cultivation, organic legislation, to see if we could reach 25% organic certified area faster in Europe. I will do that in 5 minutes, but I first have to explain something else. Why is there A&D Biopharma behind my name? Because I'm Director of Strategic Alliances at Corporate Biologicals. To be arrogant, I don't think I should have to tell you what Corporate is, but we are a market leader in biological control in agriculture. I'm also Director of Education and Innovation for Corporate Foundation. I am CEO of A&D Biopharma and CEO of A&D Agri. Those last two are working on a novel mode of action, and we call it a kind of organic herbicide or insecticide or helminticide. It's a mode of action that was discovered in 2013, and I will explain it a little bit because it bears relevance to the future of agriculture and horticulture in a novel, sustainable way. What we discovered was that cell-free DNA, so nucleotides, DNA that is normally in a cell, if you have that same DNA outside the organism, then the organism, when it touches it, it stops growing. So we call it DNA self-inhibition. And it gave us a novel perspective on how nature works, how we could develop novel biocontrol systems. And from this finding, we rapidly developed into medical applications. And it may surprise you, but through A&D Biopharma, Koppert is not only involved in novel antibiotics, which is good for the European Commission because it wants to reduce antibiotics, the traditional ones, but we're also in specific anti-helminth research and tumoral research. With this novel finding, and Jan will like it out of curiosity, but he may not like it when I say it, but several organic practices or horticultural practices have to be revisited, like bringing crop residue back into the soil is a very bad idea. Recirculation water without taking out some nucleotides, some DNA, is a very bad idea. Using steam or solarization is an interesting idea, but it will not cause the root of it will not solve the root cause of several pests and plagues. So what I want to say is that if you really look at nature, and I'm very happy that many people do, you discover totally new things. And as a biological principle, you can apply it in any industry, from agriculture to livestock to animal health. So you can have questions. I can present presentations later on this novel finding. We go fast with it. But now the other part. How can we look at organic legislation in a different way? Many people, and last week in America, a judge decided that out of soil growing could stay USDA organic certified. And there were a lot of discussions in Europe about allowing organic farmers to grow in containers out of soil. I think it's an interesting idea, but it's not the subject. I think the problem in Europe is that we do not have specific made-to-measure regulation or certification for protected cropping. We know what is not allowed in organic protected cropping, but it's a very diverse cropping technique. And I think we should all strive to have specific protected cropping regulation. And there is the issue. It's not about only the soil or not soil, but it's about the simple effect of closing off a crop from outside air or light is an intensification in any way, shape, or form. And that intensification needs specific regulation, specific techniques, specific technologies. And I think the organic sector is a very technological driven sector. When Jan speaks about all the examples, it is technology. It's knowing how things work. Technology is not only aluminum and glass. And I think the organic sector can come up with novel ideas on the best protected cropping with the insight that we all have. We have the new water directive in 2027 that will influence what we can do in protected cropping, organic or not. So I'm calling for a new discussion or a dialogue on how protected cropping in Europe should look like. There's so much more known now about intensive organic that we can take right decisions, feed it into the European Commission, together with the organic sector, and to have specific organic protected cropping regulation, because I'm very happy with the Aboca herbs and things like that, but organic vegetables are in a way the queen of organic. So I will leave some time for questions and remarks, but that's it.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for that. So I come back here, sorry. Thanks for all of you for the respect of the schedule and the time slot. So I saw that there is a question already on the chat, but has been answered by Jan. If you want to open your mic and give more answer to the question was which should be the way to shift agronomical practices from input substitution to sustainable agroecological action for organic farmers. So Jan, if you want to add something more.
Yes, well, in fact, we are dealing with a change in concept, as I told, in concept of horticulture, because of horticulture. Because growers and also the field technicians, although now it's starting to change, they've all been raised with a concept in which you have a kind of a sterile environment where you have to produce a crop, and if you have a pest, you need this product or that product, and if you so basically, we first started with biological control, replacing some products for natural enemies, but now we see that the growers themselves learn that it's not only a matter of introducing something else or using other products, it's a matter of respecting biodiversity, and that's a very important change, and that's something people will have to see. People will have to see how it learns, how it works. We have to have examples of growers who have good crops, and we have more and more who have excellent crops, who don't use pesticides, who don't, well, who do. They will always introduce beneficial mites and insects as a basis for the pest control, but who have a huge contribution of all kinds of species that come from outside. So people will have to see it, and we, based on that, we can convince them to adapt the environment, the agricultural environment, to make that possible. So it's a matter of learning in practice, adapting it to the local situation, choosing the companion plants inside the greenhouse, choosing the plants to plant in hedgerows around the greenhouses. But I must say that I'm surprised to see that so many growers are picking that up very quickly.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jan. I see two new questions here. Maybe one's from for Jacopo, one's for Peter. Peter, I'm seeing you on your screen, so I start with you. How is soil defined in EU regulation? Does the sand is also considered as soil? And what is the percentage of organic material it has to be? And what do you think about it?
That would be a question to me,
yeah.
Peter? Yeah. There is no definition on soil. Basically, I can grow tomatoes in my hair, but and they might grow, but we do not know what soil exactly means to whom. For the organic sector, anything that's connected to the bedrock of the earth could be construed as soil. But soil is such a rich phenomenon. We don't know. I think it's a good suggestion by Mr. Ravensberg to have a good definition of soil.
Okay, thanks. So I go back to Jacopo. You have two questions for you. First, could you explain a bit more about the challenges as we saw with Netherlands or Spain? How do growers in open fields fight pests and deal with water management? Is there any specific techniques or experiences that you can share with us? And the second question, it's more about, you spoke about the Biodiversity Alliance certification. That certification is intentionally or only for Italy, and there is a specific tool or standards that will evaluate the biodiversity quality in your area. Jacopo.
Yes, okay. So I'm going to start from the second one. Biodiversity Alliance is an international scheme. Here in Italy, there is a certification body which propose to Italian company this kind of certification, but it is an international scheme, so it is available also abroad. And around concerning the first question, well, it's of course a very big team. So in our production, in order to fight disease, the main strategy is the selection of varieties, because it is absolutely fundamental have a variety which are resistant to specific disease. Of course, also the rotation is fundamental, because it is a fundamental aspect in every kind of organic production, and it is particularly true in the case of medicinal plants. So rotation and selection are the most important strategies in pest control. On the contrary, for insect, in our case, many kinds of medicinal plants, our production are rich in essential oils, and so they are not prey to insect attacks. Therefore, we rarely use any kind of formulation in order to preserve our species. And also in this case, the use of crop rotation is fundamental anyway in order to preserve attack of insects, especially those active in the soil. And the fight against weeds in our kind of cultivation is the most expensive and complex activity, since organic farming does not allow herbicides, and we operate in different manners. The creation of false seed bed consists of preparing the soil as if it had to receive the seeds, and then apply a surface tillage and subsequent irrigation in order to stimulate the development of existing weeds, and then eliminated them without a big tillage of the soil in order to avoid that seeds from downstairs came upstairs. And also in weeding control, we have a collaboration with Pisa University in order to analyze the soil concentration in weeds seeds, in order to be able to I would say forecast the following presence of weeds in our soils. And last but not least, the mechanization. Mechanization is absolutely fundamental in the control of weeds, and so we developed specific machinery in order to be able to go inside our fields with machinery in order to control weeds, but only in those cultivation, in those crops that are cultivated in line. On the contrary, the activity that I described before, the false seed bed, is the only one technique in preserving the possibility to have a very high proliferation of weeds.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jacopo. Last question.
I think that I didn't answer to water, and in our crops we don't have actually the problem of water, since we are located in an area where there is the Tiber River, and there is a dam for the Tiber River, so there is an artificial lake very large, and in our area we can use this water. So water is not a problem in our experience.
Thanks for this complete answer. So last question, because now the time is over. So as I said on my slide, normally all questions will be transferred to the speakers if we don't have time, but maybe for Jan, there is two questions a bit linked about, do you consider the soil life when you speak about biodiversity? And you told about water use and measurement, but is water recycling possible in the biodiversity soil-based growing?
Yes, obviously biodiversity in soil means that you look for a balance between a lot of different microorganisms. And the problem of that is, of course, that it's not very visible. You cannot compare it to finding predatory mites or predatory bugs or syrphid flies in the leaf mass. And all those little small microbes in soil are not so visible, but the consequences are. So we can show that, and we can show that with a certain management you can get this microbiological balance. But that's the issue of biodiversity in the soil environment. And the other question about water use, no, in a soil crop you cannot recycle water. So what we try to do, and what is one of the priorities in the coming time, is to optimize the use in a soil crop, and we know that we can spare quite an important percentage, as I said in my presentation, compared to the normal growers who are also producing in soil. So we can optimize it, but we will not reach the efficiency of water use and fertilizer use as you can reach in a substrate crop where you can recycle the drainage solution.
Thanks. I see the last question, but maybe it would be a long answer to talk about it, about what would be the best between conventional practices spreading low dose of pesticide combined with biocontrol, biosolution, but local seedings, or an organic production exporting their products. Is there for sure a way between the pollution is worse as this affect as well the health of people from poor to rich, while poor cannot really afford organic products? So here we say it's also linked with the consumer of we all would like to buy local and organic. We know that it's better for health, but when you don't have choice for economic reason or for where you are living, it's not easy to answer what is the best, what is better for.
I could reflect on the question. From an insect point of view, the low dosage pesticide doesn't exist. It sounds nice. It's a low dosage of pesticide, but we at corporate, we know so much about risks and dosages. Any low dosage will break the chain of biocontrol products. So it's not really a choice. I understand, Sébastien, what you want to say. I think there's a social aspect, but that requires indeed a whole new discussion or dialogue.
And to close, I know that there is people who are asking about vertical farming and organic production. Do you have an idea about it, Peter?
Oh yeah, it's a great mix, but not in Europe at this moment. But if you really look at really large agglomerations around the world, big cities, it will happen, and they will be certified as organic. And we can learn a lot from countries outside Europe on how they are going to make vertical farming organic.
Thanks a lot. Jacopo, yes.
I agree with the idea that probably there is not the possibility to have a low dose pesticide combined with biocontrol, because in practical they are two opposite, so it's quite difficult. Personally, I think that vertical farming could be interesting in terms of use of resources, but I wouldn't call it organic, only because organic, in my perspective, in my opinion, is linked to complexity, and vertical farming is the absence of complexity. So, but this is my opinion. And I saw that in the question about biodiversity alliance was also the link to the soil, and I would like to specify then that in the certification, biodiversity alliance certification, the core activity is on the soil. So the evaluation and analysis are made on the quantification of microarthropods in soils, and then there is a checklist regarding the agroecosystem. So the certification is about the agroecosystem, but the most specific evaluation are about soil.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think it was.
Can I have a response also? Some issues. Well, this low dosage pesticide, I don't think it's a matter of dosage, it's a matter of what kind of pesticide are you talking about. At this moment, the organic crops are completely closed for any chemically synthesized product, although not completely. For example, I think we all agree that the use of pheromones for mating disruption is something very positive, and we all agree that that's very welcome also in ecological production. Similarly, I can imagine that some pesticides, which are very, very low impact, but which are synthesized, may be very sustainable, and only because of the definition at this moment, they are not allowed in organic crops. Organic crops have some very, very fixed definitions, and I think for sustainability, the definition of what is an organic crop, what can you do, what can you not do, should somehow be open to discuss things, not only if they are in line with the definition, but to discuss things in the line of sustainability. Same, for example, at this moment we see that some of our very well-organized high-tech growers, they had heating to get some sensible varieties of tomatoes to the market, to the ecological market. At this moment we see that many clients of ecological product, they don't want any heating in the greenhouse. They say, well, you have a good climate, do it with your climate. Well, from the point of view of sustainability, that's something you also should evaluate. Is it more sustainable to not heat, to lose part of your crop due to fungal diseases, to simply not have a good quality of some things because you have 2-3 degrees during an entire week? So I think the basic principles should be open for discussion always, and we often we can find that the natural ways to work, for example with the soil, for example with pest management, are by far the best, but we should not automatically rule out all the things. Low dosage pesticide is not an option, but which pesticide do you use? I mentioned the example pheromones. I think it should all be somehow possible to discuss it at least. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. It's always nice to have 3 experts around the table. We have a lot of discussion and interesting exchanges, and thanks also to all the participants who I hope had answer to all their questions. So Jan, Jacopo, Peter, thanks again for your time, your availability, and your skills, competence, and know-how about this very interesting question of organic sustainability, biodiversity, and environmental friendly crop and agriculture. So thanks, and see you for next webinar, where we will see when it will be and the topics. And I will thanks again Mara Vingus, Nathalie Chavrier, and Celia Gavo from the different clusters around Europe who helped me to prepare this webinar. Thanks again, all of you, and see you next time.
It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, goodbye. Thank you very much.
Bye.